This video is to go over Chapter 2 in web design using HTML. We're going to be formatting our text in different ways by changing our headings and paragraphs, by using bold, italic, emphasis, and then adding different types of markup to our pages. When creating a web page, you add tags, which are known as markup, to the contents of the page. These tags provide extra meaning and allow browsers to show users the appropriate structure for the page. So in this chapter, we're going to focus on how to add markup to the text that appears on the pages. We're going to learn about structural markup, which are the elements you can use to describe both headings and paragraphs, and semantic markup, which provides extra information such as where emphasis is placed in a sentence, that something you have written is in a quotation and what it is, and the meaning of acronyms and so on. Now these two pages are a review of what we already learned how to do in the first chapter, but on the left side we have our headings 1 through 6. They're different levels. 1 is used for main headings, and 2 and so on are used for your subheadings. Browsers display the contents of headings at different sizes. The contents of H1 elements is the largest, and the contents of the H6 element is the smallest. The exact size at which each browser shows the headings can vary slightly. Users can also adjust the size of the text in their browser, and we'll see how to do this when we work with CSS later in this book. On the right side, we have our paragraph tag. To create a paragraph, we need to surround the words that make up the paragraph with the opening tag and the closing tag for a paragraph, which is P. By default, a browser will show each paragraph on a new line with some space between it and any subsequent paragraphs. So you can see an example on both of these pages what the headings look like and also what two different paragraphs look like together on a screen. We can add bold to words as well by enclosing them with the bold tags, which is B. To close it, you would just put the /. The B element also represents a section of text that would be presented in a visual different way. For example, bold, although the use of the B element does not imply any additional meaning. We can also italicize words by using the I tag. It also represents a section of text that would be said in a different way from surrounding content, such as technical terms, names of ships, foreign words, thoughts, or other terms that would usually be italicized. So B for bold and I for italicized. We can add superscript and subscript by surrounding the text we want to have that applied to with either sup or sub. So sub would be for superscript, something as like 2 to the second power. Sub would be something that would appear below the baseline of text, which could be used in a chemical equation. In order to make code easier to read, web page authors will often add extra spaces or start some elements on new lines. When the browser comes across 2 or more spaces next to each other, it only displays one space. Similarly, if it comes across a line break, it treats it as a single space too. This is known as white space collapsing. You will often see that web page authors take advantage of white space collapsing to indent their code in order to make it easier to follow. So that's something we talked about before. You can put in extra enters or spaces. It doesn't matter. It's just going to count all of that as one space. So you can see in their example that they did on this page where they have extra space here. They even put in some extra enters and space. It's all going to look the same in the browser. So if you want to apply extra space or a line break, there's a different way to do that. You can put in a line break, which is BR, and there's a space and then a /. This one and the horizontal line break, or horizontal rule, excuse me, are known as empty elements. That is because they only have one tag. So there's not an opening and a closing tag. There's just one. So the BR tag, this one here will add a line break. So instead of starting a new paragraph with extra space in the middle here, like we do on this one where my mouse is pointing to, a line break is going to not give you extra space between the lines. You can use that right inside of your paragraph. And the horizontal rule is going to draw a horizontal rule on your page. It's used to separate sections as well. An empty element usually has only one tag. Before the closing angled bracket of an empty element, there will often be a space and a / character. Some web page authors miss this out, but it is a good habit to get into. So with older code, you could just type the BR or the HR into the tag, but the correct and more current way to do it would be to put in a space and a / like this. So this is the only code and tags we have that do not have an opening and a closing tag. Content management systems and HTML editors such as Dreamweaver usually have two views of the page you are creating, a visual editor and a code view. So visual editors often resemble word processors. Although each editor will differ slightly, there are some features that are common to most editors that allow you to control the presentation of text. And then we have code view, which shows the code created by the visual editor, so you can manually edit it, or you can just enter new code yourself. And that's what we will be using once we get to Dreamweaver. There's a code view we can type in the HTML, which we are doing now. And then we also have a visual editor view. It's called Design View when we're in Dreamweaver. There are some text elements that are not intended to affect the structure of your web pages, but they do add extra information to the pages. These are known as semantic markups. So the rest of the chapter, we're going to talk about these. Browsers often display the contents of these elements in a different way, which we'll find out shortly. The strong element indicates that its content has strong importance. For example, the words contained in this element might be said with strong emphasis. And they're typically, by default, browsers will usually show these in bold as well. But this one here has different meaning to the word than the bold tag that we learned about earlier. Same with emphasis. The EM tag is for emphasis. It indicates that the subtly changes the meaning of a sentence using emphasis. By default, browsers will show the contents of the EM element in italics. And then we have quotations. There is block quotes. The block quote element is used for longer quotes that take up an entire paragraph. Note how the Q element is still used inside the block quote element. So how this would work here, we would have the opening block quote tag. You can ignore the cite and the rest of this here. And then inside of that, they would put in the Q for the quote and end block quote. And then there's the Q element, which is used for shorter quotes that sit inside a paragraph. Browsers are supposed to put quotes around the Q element. However, Internet Explorer does not. Therefore, many people avoid using the Q element. So using the Q element should put in these quotations for you. Both elements may use the cite attribute to indicate where the quote is from. Its value should be a URL that will have more information about the source of the quotation. If you use an abbreviation or an acronym, then the ABBR element can be used. A title attribute in the opening tag is used to specify the full term. For citations, when you are referencing a piece of work, such as a book, film, or research paper, the cite element can be used to indicate where the citation is from. And the definition tag, the first time you explain some new terminology, perhaps an academic concept or some jargon in a document, it's known as a defining instance of it. The definition element is used to indicate the defining instance of a new term. Now, some browsers will show the content of a definition element in italics. Some do not change it. Same with the cite tag. Those may also appear in italics as well. The address element has quite a specific use to contain contact details for the author of the page. It can contain a physical address, but it does not have to. For example, it may also contain a phone number or an email address. Browsers will often display the content of the address element in italics. You may also be interested in something called the H-card microformat for adding physical address information to your markup. And we will add, this is the code here to add an email address link, and it's something that we go over in the links chapter in more detail. Changes to content, the INS element is used to show content that has been inserted into a document. It'll typically be shown with an underline underneath it. And the DEL element will show text that has been deleted from it, which will have a line drawn through the word. The S element indicates something that is no longer accurate or relevant, but that should not be deleted. Visually, the content of an S element will be displayed with a line through the center. So where laptop computer was $995, now it's $375. Older code you will see used to have a U element for underline, but it's being phased out. On page 57 and 58, they have an example using different code from this book, which I will create a different video for how to make. And in summary, HTML elements are used to describe the structure of the page, such as headings, subheadings, and paragraphs. They also provide semantic information, such as where emphasis should be placed, the definition of acronym used, and when given text is a quotation. Make sure you check out the rest of my videos for Chapter 2, which will go over how to type the code that is seen in this book, and will provide more information about that as well.